What's up guys, Chris here, and today I want to talk a bit about Godfall. It's one of my most anticipated games of 2020. We've seen quite a bit of information on it for the past few days, with the most recent PC gaming show gameplay reveal that we had yesterday with the game's director, and it actually goes in quite a bit of detail over loot and loot progression, boss fights. We have a glimpse of that in this video as well, but there's also some talks about the items that you can get in this game, from weapons and armor sets and likewise. So let's talk about all of that. If you enjoyed this video, a thumbs up on it would be super awesome, and let's jump right into it. By the way, our June giveaways for any 2020 release on any platform are still up and ready. You can take part in both of them if you want to. One of them I've organized myself, and the other one was organized in partnership with Instant Gaming, so a huge shout out to them for making this possible. But you can follow the links in the description box down below as well as in the pinned comments to take part in them, and I'm going to announce the winners both here on this channel as well as via the email addresses provided. By the way, if you didn't check the PC gameplay trailer from yesterday, I definitely recommend you go ahead and do so. It looks really nice, and between this and other reveal from the PlayStation 5 event a few days ago, we have about 5 minutes of brand new gameplay footage. And I'm going to admit this actually gets my hopes really high. I'm really hyped up for a game like Godfall. I've been looking for a good hack and slash, and even more so RPG, for a very long time that's also kind of like single player, even though this one also has co-op, and this looks exactly like the type of game that I would really enjoy playing. Now of course, as you know, this is branded as a looter slasher, but let's be honest, it's kind of like an action RPG at this point. But it does have some really nice environments over there, I'm gonna give it that. They seem to be very lush and vibrant, and there's also a nice selection of locations, very distinct from one another. Some of these can be seen in yesterday's reveal in more detail. Of course, we had these really high temples and structures in the back, combined with very vibrant forest areas, and I think that this is a recurrent theme for Godfall. This vibrancy seems to be like the overall aesthetic that the game is going with. It's honestly very pleasing, at least in my opinion. It's way better, I've said this before, way better than the initial trailer reveal that we had last year, but I really enjoy the fact that there's a nice selection of environments you can enjoy and play into. We even had this shot of this castle ruins, and at some point we saw some ancient underground ruins that seem to be filled with enemies, most likely things to explore and uncover, and of course this also ties in with that loot progression I was talking about. So basically this is going to be a huge emphasis of Godfall: loot progression, RPG elements, as well as that hack and slash part, high skill combat that also seems to be very fast paced, and it does seem to require quite a bit of player skill in order to like nail down properly. Now personally, I do enjoy the fact that most of the game is going to be melee oriented, so melee combat is going to be like the biggest part of everything that this game has to offer, but there is a nice mix of that as well as quite a number of magic spell abilities. In fact, you are going to be using quite a ton of these. We've seen a varied range of skills in these gameplay trailers. It appears that you can have more special abilities to cast and not just one. So for example, in one of these shots we can see the character casting one big AoE magic ability at his feet that kind of deals a ton of damage and pushes back enemies, but then immediately follows with a charged multi-slash that kind of deals again more damage to the enemy. And I'm pretty sure that I've seen the same multi-slash ability being used in the past, but that time it was basically making the character jump from one enemy to another. So I think it's safe to assume if that there's more enemies clamped together, this multi-slash is going to affect multiple enemies at the same time. But there's a ton more in there that I really enjoyed. It seems that there's a huge emphasis on magic damage as well. In fact, a big theme of this game is the fact that the world is kind of split into several realms. Some of these have been talked about by the game's director. We have the theme of ice, fire, wind, and earth, and it's not just like a thematic or lore kind of thing. It appears to tie in with the gameplay mechanics as well. So in various of these gameplay shots we can see many of the weapons being imbued or enchanted with various types of elementals. Many times we can see a weapon that kind of has fire effects on it to maybe deal more damage to certain enemies, or maybe there's some resistances and weaknesses in this game that enemies have, and you're going to have to like base your attacks and enchantments on that, which sounds really awesome and kind of gives a layer of detail to the overall combat. This also goes in with those frost effects on weapons. We've also seen a number of these in there as well, and there was also this kind of like green aura around one of these weapon attacks, so I'm pretty sure that that's what earth attacks or enchantments kind of feel like. Now this also brings us to that loot and gear progression, and according to the game's director, this is going to be a huge emphasis of the game. So throughout our journeys we can find these armor sets called Valor Plates, and it seems that these are going to be found throughout our journeys, though there hasn't been a clarification of that. So is this something that you can actually get from drops, like enemy drops or boss drops, or do you have to actually craft them, or is there a series of challenges that you have to complete that reward you these? There's many questions that I still have, and there's also the question of, can these armor sets be broken down? Can they be mixed and matched between each other? Because from what it's implied from many of these trailers and gameplay, it seems that they are standalone pieces that can't be mixed, and they all have their own unique characteristics and maybe even like abilities that they give you. And there's also these exquisite weapons with very powerful traits that we are going to want to get our hands on so that we can become invincible. But of course invincible in quotation marks, because yeah, that's not going to be possible. Nonetheless, on the side of weapons, expect about 5 weapon classes from what has been confirmed up until now. We have our selection of two-handers and one-handers. On the two-hander side, expect something like swords, hammers and spears that we've already seen in all of these trailers and gameplay. These, especially the two-handers, seem to have a lot of weight to them, and the combat in general seems to feel very impactful, at least from the gameplay we've seen so far. Very satisfying actually to take down enemies from all of this footage that I'm seeing. Many of them even seem to incorporate some movement capabilities into them, like for example this hammer charge back into the enemy that kind of reminds me a bit of some of those animations in Monster Hunter. But of course I'm also going to go over the fact that there appears to be a shield, and this seems to be usable with pretty much any weapon in the game. At first I thought it was sword and shield, but at some point you can see the character deactivating the shield and immediately switching to double swords, for example, and then quickly turning on the shield again to slam it into the enemy. So it's really a nice mechanic that's probably gonna be with us at most times, or at very least something that we can unlock and use with other weapons as well. But by far my most favorite has to be what appears to be a number of chain blades. I'm pretty sure that these are chain blades themselves, kind of reminds me of God of War a little bit. And yeah, what's cool about these is that it appears you can also use these to like pull in enemies, like kind of throw a chain blade and pull in enemies, and this definitely reminds me of God of War right here. Just these sequences right here definitely remind me of that. Furthermore, we did get a glimpse at what the loot drops look like. We've seen a number of shots with a ton of stuff dropping on the ground, and some of these were different colors, like we've seen green, most likely akin to something that's uncommon rarity, and then we also saw something like orange that might be epic, masterwork, or like legendary. It depends on what type of rarity progression Godfall is going with, but it does appear that loot drops are a part of this game, and that's going to be a way to actually get these, maybe even like crafting components. I doubt that a game like Godfall isn't going to have that, as gear and like armors are going to be a huge part of this game. It remains to be seen in the following days and weeks, but on a final note, we also have the discussion of boss fight. We've seen a teaser of a boss fight right here, but unfortunately the video kinda ends right before it engages with the enemy. But nonetheless, it does look that there's going to be a nice selection of boss fights, big and small. By the way, this was a smaller boss with its arena. It kinda reminds me a bit of Lords of the Fallen. I'm pretty sure I've said this in the past, but overall I think that boss fights are going to be a huge part of this game, and one of the main ways we're gonna acquire loot and powerful items to progress even further and go to the next big tough enemies. So there's been a number of other bosses that have also been teased in the past. It remains to be seen if this is going to be the main way to actually acquire loot in the first place. I'm pretty sure that there's also room for like a crafting system, maybe even completing challenges in order to get additional gear and items, and there's a ton of possibilities that Godfall can present that I'm really excited for. Again, a ton more information is going to follow suit in the upcoming days and weeks, hopefully sooner rather than later. Of course, I'm going to cover everything that's going to be new here on this channel, so definitely smash that subscribe and like button if you want to like stay up to date with Godfall. But yeah, this is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm gonna see you guys in the next one.